Hi, my name is Lilia Kirilenka, and I have had groups with 100% pass rates for SBR exam. And now I'm going to share with you some tips to pass this exam efficiently and effectively. And to begin with, we are going to talk about what to expect from this very exam. You need to understand that the key to preparation is to understand what you are training for. If you are training for a marathon, it's one type of running. If you are training for sprints, it's different type of exercise. The same idea is with your ACCA papers. So learn what is that you need to do in the end, and as such, schedule your studies accordingly. When we are talking about question 1, question 1 is going to be about consolidation, but not the consolidation that you had in your FR exam. No, instead, there are going to be changes in group structure, and as such, you need to make yourself a table where you are going to show what is going to happen if you had 20% and now you have 80%. You had 80%, now you have 40%, and so on. With my students, you do have this revision webinar when we talk about different types of the changes. You also need to talk about discussions. You need to know those roughly 7 questions that can be tested. Like, for example, is there a control or no control? So you need to understand what to do with the options that can be accessible. You need to understand how to challenge that. You need to understand how to talk about the situations when we don't know whether this company acquired that company or the other way around. And also you need to be able to talk about adjustments, how those adjustments are going to be introduced in your spreadsheets. This is an important aspect because many people use books and they study goodwill calculation. And then they fail to realize that goodwill is actually an entry. So for example, if your company forgot to account for the fair value uplift of land, this means that you need to debit land and credit goodwill, and that is how you are going to record it in the statement of financial position. So with all the topics about changes in group structure, think about the double entry and think about how it can happen in statement of financial position, in statement of comprehensive income, and sometimes in cash flow statement. But why study with somebody else if you can study with me? Check out my website. In here you have 3 course options. Each of them is fantastic. Each of them is great. They just differ with the volume of me that you're going to get. And also you can click here and enroll for 1 week of free study group. And with this study group, you can test whether you like my approach or not. Most likely, spoiler alert, you are going to like it. So yes, there's going to be an SBR group for September 2026 session. So apply, get an email from me and join this 1 week of free micro-learning activities. We also have question 2 that is quite typical. And question 2 is going to be on ethics. There are going to be something like 8 marks, which is a lot. So please remember that when we're talking about ethics, we are talking about 3 steps. And you need to know how those 3 steps are applied. Because just saying that this contradicts the ACCA Code of Ethics is not enough. It's not going to make it. So ethics is the key, the 5 principles. 5 threads, highly unlikely to be tested. 5 principles, 95% chance. Make sure that these are absolutely spot on. And for you to be able to talk about ethics, you need to understand how major ratios are going to be impacted. Like, for example, if a company failed to account for IFRS 16 leases properly, then its return on asset is going to be overstated. If the company recognized something as equity instead of liability, gearing is going to look better compared to what it actually is. So I have a special video on the ratios, on the impact of the standards on the main ratios that are tested in question 2. Make sure that you watch that very lecture. Also, you need to understand which standards to focus on when you're preparing for a question 2. So for example, IS-32, equity versus liability, that is for sure. So make sure that you understand that when we're talking about, let's say, this very standard, we would need to talk about annual payments and final repayment and challenge whether there is going to be an obligation to deliver cash or another financial asset, or whether there is going to be an obligation to deliver variable number of entities' own instruments. With other questions, you will also need to talk about financial statements perception. That is what many students fail to practice, but you will have questions like discuss the importance of, let's say, significant accounting policies note for the users of the financial statements. Discuss the importance of IFRS 18 substituting IS1. You need to make sure that you attempt at least 2 questions of this kind in order to understand how to write those assignment-based questions, because you can't ignore it. You also need to know how standards are applied. So, for example, when we're talking about IFRS 15 revenue, you read it as a fairy tale. Step 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay, 3, 4, 5, maybe we need to do something with it. But when you are studying your standards and you see that there is step 1, for some reason, you need to think about how it can be tested when it works and when it doesn't work. So, for example, when we're talking about revenue, there has to be contract between parties. Contract does not necessarily have to be in a written form, but let's say if I have not agreed, then it's not revenue for you. So, for example, if a company sends samples to clients, the clients did not agree to pay for it, so no revenue can be recognized. You also need to learn about the links between standards, because your question is going to be for 10 marks, and some of the marks are going to come from core standard, and some of the marks are going to come from those very links. So, for example, when we're talking about, let's say, decommissioning provision, we need to understand that if we need to recognize it, then your property, plant, equipment is going to increase. If your property, plant, equipment is going to increase, then your depreciation is going to increase. And also it may be that there is going to be impairment. So you need to understand those trigger chains. And we do that, by the way, in our quizzes. And finally, you need to understand what to expect from your tutor, because I have had endless stories about someone buying a course and realizing that it was A, boring, and B, useless. It was just a person who would just reread the book from the second screen. So make sure that your tutor explains mark allocation. So literally, not only why it's 0 or 1, but why do they think that this very sentence scores a mark? Why do they believe that it does not score a mark? You need to have those explanations. So, for example, even when we're talking about a study group, I do explain why a certain idea earned a mark or it has not. It can be as comments to your assignment, it can be as my voice messages, but I make sure that you understand so that you would know which patterns to repeat and which patterns to forgo. And when we're talking about the course, you need to make sure that your course is not just theory rewritten. There have to be explanations when certain provisions work or they don't work. Like as I explained to you with the case of our IFRS 15 step 1, when it won't work. Or for example, when we're talking about IS-37, when is that then we use the highest probability, and when is that then we're going to use the weighted average. Make sure that there is endless scenario applications in your course, because if you just are bombarded with the standard, you won't remember it, because that is not how adult's brain works. It has to be a little bit of theory, a little bit of practice, a little bit of theory, a little bit of practice. I personally have no idea how to teach adults otherwise. There have to be links between the standards, as we have discussed, because when you are going to learn the concept, you are going to be presented with lectures which are IS 16, IS 40, IS 37, and so on. So there are going to be books of standards, each of them on its separate shelf. But when you get to the exam, you have a question that takes a piece from this part of knowledge, piece from there, and you need to be able to navigate in your mental library. So make sure that you have lectures which explain the links between the standards.